You wake up at 7 a.m, not because you want to, because you have to. You shower, you commute, you sit in a box for 8 hours doing work you don't care about for people who don't care about you. 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year, for 40 years. And you hate it. You've always hated it. But you do it anyway. Because you were trained to. Trained by a system you didn't choose. Built by a man you've never heard of. Designed over a century ago for one purpose. To make sure you never had a choice. His name was John D. Rockefeller. And to understand how he trapped you, you first need to understand who he was. Part 1. Who was Rockefeller? John Davison Rockefeller was born in 1839 in rural New York. His father was a con artist, a literal snake oil salesman who abandoned the family for months at a time and taught young John one lesson that would define his life. "I cheat my boys every chance I get. I want to make them sharp," Rockefeller learned. By age 16, he was working as a bookkeeper, obsessing over every penny. He didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't socialize. He just counted money and dreamed of more. In 1870, at age 31, he founded Standard Oil. And then he did something no businessman had ever done before. He didn't just compete, he eliminated competition entirely. Here's how it worked. Rockefeller went to the railroads, the only way to transport oil at the time. He made them a deal. "Give me secret discounts on shipping. In exchange, I'll guarantee you a constant volume of oil." The railroads agreed. Now Rockefeller could ship oil cheaper than anyone else. His competitors couldn't understand why they were losing money while he was getting richer. But that wasn't enough. He demanded the railroads charge his competitors more and give him a cut of what his competitors paid. Read that again. His competitors were literally paying him every time they shipped oil. When they couldn't survive, he bought them. When they refused to sell, he undercut their prices until they went bankrupt, then bought their assets for pennies. By 1880, Standard Oil controlled 90% of American oil refining. 90%. One man, one company, controlling the energy supply of an industrializing nation. The money was beyond comprehension. At his peak, Rockefeller's wealth was estimated at $400 billion in today's money. That's more than Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Bill Gates combined. He was not just rich, he was a financial empire unto himself. He owned banks that financed his operations, railroads that shipped his product, politicians who wrote laws in his favor, newspapers that shaped public opinion. This is important to understand. Rockefeller didn't just have money, he had infrastructure, he had systems. He understood that real power isn't about how much you have, it's about how much you control. And by 1900, John D. Rockefeller controlled more of America than most people could imagine. But he had a problem. Part 2, the problem. His empire needed workers. Millions of them. Workers to drill his oil, workers to build his pipelines, workers to run his refineries, workers to maintain his railroads. But not just any workers. Obedient workers. Workers who showed up on time, did what they were told, didn't ask questions, didn't demand too much money, didn't organize against him. And that's where the problem got complicated. Because America's schools were teaching people to think. In the early 1900s, education looked nothing like it does today. Schools were local, curriculum varied wildly. Many focused on classical education, philosophy, history, literature, rhetoric. They were producing citizens, people who could think critically, people who understood their rights, people who might realize they were being exploited. Rockefeller had seen what educated workers did. They formed unions, they went on strike, they demanded fair wages, they disrupted production, they cost him money. In 1914, at a Rockefeller-owned coal mine in Colorado, workers went on strike for better conditions. The response? The Colorado National Guard, funded by Rockefeller, attacked the workers' camp. They burned it to the ground. 21 people died, including 11 children. The Ludlow Massacre. Public outrage was immense. Rockefeller's reputation was destroyed overnight. Congressional investigations followed. And Rockefeller learned a lesson. You can't just crush workers with violence. It's too visible, too expensive, too damaging to your reputation. You need a different approach. You need workers who never become a problem in the first place. You need to get them before they can think. You need to redesign how Americans are educated. Part 3. The solution. In 1902, Rockefeller created the General Education Board. He funded it with $180 million of his own money. In today's terms, that's roughly $6 billion. $6 billion. Donated to one organization with one purpose. To reshape American education in his image. And this is where it gets dark. The General Education Board didn't announce its intentions, but its internal documents tell the real story. Frederick Gates was Rockefeller's closest advisor, the man who ran the General Education Board. In 1913, he wrote a mission statement. Listen carefully. We shall not try to make these people philosophers or men of learning. We are not to raise up from among them authors, orators, poets, or men of letters. The task is simple. We will organize children and teach them to do in a perfect way the things their fathers and mothers are doing in an imperfect way. Do you understand what he's saying? The goal was never education. The goal was production. Produce workers, not thinkers, not philosophers, not leaders. Workers. And Rockefeller had the money to make it happen. Part 4. The 3 tools. The General Education Board used 3 mechanisms to transform American schools into worker factories. Tool number 1, vocational tracking. Rockefeller's board promoted something called vocational education. It sounds reasonable. Teach practical skills, prepare students for jobs. But look at who received vocational education. Poor children, immigrant children, black children. And look at who received academic education. Wealthy children, the children of industrialists, the children of Rockefeller's own social class. Vocational tracking didn't expand opportunity. It sorted children by economic class before they were old enough to understand what was happening. If you were born poor, you were tracked into manual labor by age 12. If you were born rich, you were tracked into management and leadership. Your future was decided before you hit puberty. And it was decided by men who needed cheap workers. Tool number 2, the factory model. Have you ever noticed that schools look exactly like factories? Bells ring to start and end periods. Students sit in rows. They're expected to work in silence. They're evaluated on output and compliance. This is not a coincidence. Rockefeller's board promoted the factory model of education explicitly. Children were raw materials, schools were assembly lines, the product was workers. Students learned to respond to bells, to sit still for hours, to follow instructions without questioning them, to accept that their time belonged to an authority figure. 15,000 hours of this training before you enter the workforce. By the time you get your first job, sitting in a cubicle from 9 to 5 feels natural. Feels natural because you've been doing it since kindergarten. Tool number 3, standardized testing. Rockefeller needed a scientific justification for tracking children into different futures. So his board promoted intelligence testing, IQ tests, standardized assessments, objective measures of potential. Except they weren't objective. These tests measured compliance, how well you followed instructions, how quickly you provided expected answers, how well you performed under time pressure. They measured how good a worker you would be. Children who scored low were tracked into vocational programs. Children who scored high were tracked into academic programs. Your score at age 10 determined your economic class at age 30. All dressed up as science. Part 5. The legacy. By 1920, the General Education Board had reshaped education in 46 states. The factory model was standard. Vocational tracking was everywhere. Standardized testing determined children's futures. Rockefeller got exactly what he paid for. A pipeline of obedient workers who showed up on time, followed orders, and never asked why. Those children became the workers of 1940, who raised the workers of 1960, who raised the workers of 1980, who raised you. The system Rockefeller built didn't end, it evolved. The bells became calendar notifications. The grades became performance reviews. The obedience training became cultural fit. The factory became the open plan office. But the function remained the same. Training humans to accept that their time belongs to someone else. Part 6. The math of your life. Let me show you what Rockefeller's system did to your life. 13 years of school, 4 more years of college if you're lucky. 17 years learning to obey, then 45 years of work, 62 years in the system. You retire at 67. Average life expectancy is 78. You get 11 years. 11 years of freedom. If your health holds out, if your savings last, if the system doesn't find a way to keep extracting from you. Is that the life you designed? Or is that the life Rockefeller designed for you? Here's what makes this so sinister. Rockefeller didn't hide what he was doing. The General Education Board's documents are public. Frederick Gates's quote is real. You can look this up. But you won't find it in school. Because schools don't teach you about the men who designed them. That would defeat the purpose. You were never supposed to know. You were supposed to go through the system, accept your place, and spend your life making money for people like Rockefeller. And most people do exactly that. They wake up at 7, they commute, they sit in boxes, they dream of weekends, they dream of retirement. They never ask why. Because asking why was trained out of them. Part 7, the exit. So where does that leave you? Sitting in the trap, knowing it's a trap, still unable to leave. I won't insult you with easy answers. The cage is real. The mortgage is real. The responsibilities are real. Rockefeller won. You're living proof. But here's what he didn't anticipate. Awareness. Once you see the cage, you can't pretend it's a home. Once you understand the system, you stop blaming yourself for struggling within it. You're not lazy. You're not broken. You're not failing. You're a human being inside a machine that was designed for extraction. That knowledge won't pay your rent. It won't quit your job for you. It won't undo years of conditioning. But it gives you something Rockefeller never wanted you to have. The ability to question. Why do I wake up at 7? Why do I spend 2 hours commuting? Why does my schedule belong to someone else? Why was I trained to accept this as normal? These are dangerous questions. Questions that make systems uncomfortable. Questions that Rockefeller spent $6 billion to prevent. The system is still there. But now you know it's a system. And systems can be questioned. Systems can be understood. And eventually, systems can be escaped. Not all at once, not by everyone, not easily, but by those who see clearly. Those who refuse to pass the cage to their children. Those who remember that education was supposed to free the mind, not chain it to a factory. Rockefeller has been dead for almost 90 years. But every time you punch a clock, every time you obey without asking why, every time you feel that dread on Sunday night, he wins again. The question is, how many more times will you let him?